All right, good evening. So if you can go ahead and take your seats, we'll get started. Hi, Lan. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I'll give you just a few seconds to get seated. So it's wonderful to see so many folks here, and I know that we're all so very thankful to be actually meeting in person. Yay! This is the first time we've done the big reveal in person in the last few years with COVID, so that's fantastic news. Before we really get started in the program, I do want to give a special hand to Pat, who just put something in her mouth, so sorry about that, Pat, and Connie for putting all of this together. So takes a village, and we appreciate it very much, so thank you. So my name is Sylvia, and I'm board secretary for Impact 100 East Bay, and I'm very excited to be with you all this evening and kick off our annual meeting and our big reveal. I'd like to start with a little bit about myself, because there's many of you that I haven't actually met, and tell you a little bit about my journey with Impact. I first joined Impact in our founding year. I was approached by a work friend and colleague, and she told me about a group of women who was organizing, as we tend to do, around a very simple concept. Gather 100 women, each with $1,000, put together a $100,000 grant, benefiting local nonprofits across Alameda and Contra Costa counties. And I said, wow, that sounds really, really interesting. And she said, and by the way, these are not any ordinary grants, but they're transformational grants about unproven but solid, sustainable concepts to improve our communities. So for me, at that time, while I had done GoFundMes and I had certainly donated funds, I had never really seen the direct impact of the funds that I had donated. And so I told my friend, yes, I'm in, and I joined Impact. And so for the first couple of years, I donated and I voted, and then gradually signed on to join the grants committee. And my first year out, I led the site visit to Covenant House. Now that year, they were not awarded the impact grant, but that site visit for me was life-changing in a lot of ways. I continue to volunteer with Covenant House, and I have since helped them partner with another organization that I serve with, that supports the LGBTQ community, and that partnership has grown beyond the Oakland Covenant House to Santa Clara and all the way down to Southern California. And this is not an unusual story. This is the way it tends to go with Impact 100. The benefit of what we do tends to grow and spread, and you'll hear more about that this evening. So with my grants committee experience, I was motivated to learn more, and I was approached and asked if I would like to serve on the board, and so I jumped at the opportunity, and so that's why I'm here with you tonight. And I'm very excited and proud to share that since 2017, when we first started giving grants, we have given more than $660,000, so way to go, Impact. And in our program tonight, with the big reveal, we're very excited to share with you another incredible year of grants. So let's take a look at what we have planned for the evening. So first up, we have some brief business to attend to, some updates for the board. This is our annual meeting. Gwen Lennox is going to join us as our keynote speaker, so thank you very, very much, Gwen. She's going to speak and share some fascinating facts about women and giving. Stephanie Shaw will be next up, and Stephanie is our membership co-chair, and we'll be sharing the big reveal, as well as some new things that are happening in membership. Riffy O'Brien is our grants co-chair, and Riffy will lead us through the heart of why we're all here, which is our grants process. Then we'll close with an opportunity that we're calling Sip and Sign Up, which is all about volunteering. And Lonnie Marshall over there has agreed to head that up. So thank you, Lonnie. Now, a little statement about volunteering, however. We are a volunteer organization. We're 100% volunteer, but there is no expectation or requirement that you participate in a volunteer capacity. We want to make that clear. Our motto is one woman, one vote, and we're very dedicated and proud of that. However, if the evening shows something that you're interested in, the opportunity for sure exists. Okay, so we'll go straight into the board update. And since this is our annual meeting, I also wanted to call attention to, on the desk, you'll see that we have our financial statements, and another round of thanks to Debbie and Jailyn. Jailyn and Debbie, where's Debbie? Debbie's back there, so thank you. Thanks for putting these together. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about board updates. So the first thing is Carol Nitz, our immediate past president. We'd like to say thank you very, very much to Carol. She's not here. She has moved to the East Coast. Carol was our immediate past board president, and she served 6 years on the board. Carol joined as part of the founding board for Impact, and her leadership saw us through the COVID years, which was difficult for everybody. But especially nonprofits. But in that period, we actually at Impact were able to grow. We'll miss Carol, and although she is now all the way in Maryland, she remains passionate. Her heart stays with Alameda and Contra Costa service. And so she will remain a member of Impact 100 East Bay. And thankfully, she still answers the telephone when we ask her for advice. So Carol has some really big shoes to fill. But Jane Durkin, who many of you know as our co-leader for the Grants Committee for the last 4 years, has been very successful in that role. And Jane is definitely up to the task in terms of taking on the president role. And so thank you to Jane. She's not here tonight. She had a last-minute opportunity to play with penguins down at the bottom of the planet, so she's actually in Antarctica tonight. Who could pass that up? So we'll see Jane soon, but thank you, Jane, and I'm sure many of you know Jane. Riffy O'Brien has been appointed as the Grants co-chair, along with Denise and Jane in 2022. And our bylaws actually require that when we add a new member, appoint a new member to the board, that has to be ratified by our membership. And so you may have seen and you may have voted online, but if you didn't, when you checked in tonight, if you're an active member, you would have received a little slip. So if you haven't done that yet, if you could check your yay or nay and sign it at the bottom so that we can get Riffy properly ratified and as a member of our board. So thank you, Riffy, for putting your hand up. So other changes include Stacy has moved. Stacy, where are you? Thank you. She's responsible for the tech setup. That's why I'm feeling a little bit lost up here because I'm not a very technical person. So Stacy has moved to IT from membership. And then Angel Moore has also left the board. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention another individual in the room, our founder and first president, Nancy Clark. So Nancy, if you can raise your hand. So none of this would have happened without Nancy. It was her leadership and perseverance and vision that brought the concept of Impact 100 to the East Bay, and she got a group of folks together, and here we are 7 years later going to give another set of grants, and isn't that awesome? So thank you, Nancy. All right. So now, I'd like to transition to Gwen, our keynote speaker, and I'm going to read to you a little bit about Gwen's background. Gwen is the Senior Director of Development for Strategic Initiatives at UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital Foundation. Gwen engages our East Bay communities to secure philanthropic support for children's most urgent and compelling needs. She partners with the medical team and hospital leadership in building strategic partnerships with the donor community, resulting in exciting new advancements for pediatric medical care. Before joining Children's, she was the campaign director for building the Lafayette Library, where we all are now, and Learning Center, and spearheading an effort which raised more than $16 million for completion of this beloved space. So thanks for that, Gren. That's awesome. She is a grateful parent of Children's Hospital, a UC Davis engineering graduate, and in partnership with her OB-GYN husband, she enjoys adulting with their two 20-something children. So let's welcome Gwen, and thank you. And we do have a couple of microphones for a couple of questions when Gwen is done, and I'll work the crowd if anybody has a question.
Great. Thank you, Sylvia. Can everybody hear me all right? All right. My lifeguard voice always comes in handy. Oh, I did something. I might need tech support for this. Well, first of all, thank you, Stacy, here. It's on here, but it... Oops.
It just went to sleep. It hadn't been touched.
All right, got it. Thank you. The magic touch. All right, I am delighted to be a part of this group and hear and learn more about what you're doing. Sylvia, thank you for sharing your journey. It mirrors a lot of what I'm going to touch on tonight. So I'll be talking about personal, professional experiences in community building for the Library and Learning Center, and then also touching on the fundraising work that I'm doing for Children's Hospital in Oakland. I wove some information about women in giving, and I had two wonderful resources to mention: the Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors and the Lilly School of Philanthropy in Indiana. They've done research and have great background information, and you'll see a few of their slides that talks particularly about women in giving and how that's changing over time. In looking at and thinking about the work that I do as a fundraiser, I liken more of what I do as being a matchmaker. It's a matter of listening to donor goals, their priorities, their aspirations, and then sharing opportunities that might be a fit or of interest. And this applies for both the work that I did with the team that built this Library and Learning Center and the work I'm doing at Children's. Interestingly enough, I contrast the two experiences. Fundraising for a children's hospital is somewhat counterintuitive. You think, oh gosh, Children's Hospital, everybody wants to get behind philanthropy and children. Not so the case. In the 9+ years that I've been doing this work, it remains challenging. And it's not for, there's some obvious reasons behind that. If you think about the situation that young parents face when they come and they find themselves at a children's hospital, they are dealing with their own family crisis. It's not themselves, it's their child, their children, their grandchild, whoever the family member is, friend, community, neighbor. And often they don't have access to wealth to show gratitude. If you contrast that to adult medical support, it is night and day. As adults, when we're grateful for whatever transformational activity or service or care that we have, we are able to show gratitude. We're able to make an adult decision and direct our gifts. Not so for a children's hospital. The contrast here for the Library and Learning Center has some parallels to that, and I'll talk about that as we go forward. The committee, and I think what I would speak to how this place took shape, it was truly a multifaceted endeavor. It included a team of talented volunteers, a labor of love, and they engaged the community at large for building the library. And again, there's some real interesting lessons learned around needs assessment and listening to your population that I'll talk about. So let me see if I can do this without turning it off. And then the slide is only partially showing, so I'll speak to this for some weird reason. Okay. Oh, there's always tech glitches. This is a traditional slide that you're not seeing. Again, most people, when you think about where does philanthropy come from, everybody always thinks corporations, and large entities. Well, and in fact, what you're not seeing on this slide is 5% of philanthropic support comes from corporations across the United States. The majority of giving comes from individuals. Individuals consist of 71%, 10% comes from foundations, and I will say the bulk of the foundations are family foundations or family-generated foundations. Again, individual. Bequests make up 9%, and then the remaining wedge is the 5%. So that's, I think, a telling theme that you're going to hear as we continue the conversation. Another noteworthy thing that I'm very proud of is California is the most philanthropic state in the U.S. So you are in good company, you're in a good state that honors and respects and understands the power of philanthropy. The other interesting and exciting thing about this is women control more of the financial pie more than ever, and it's going to continue to grow. This next slide, which I hope shows up, yes, is it up there? Yes. Women. This is from the Lilly School of Philanthropy, and women's wealth is rising. And I'm going to look at 40% of the global wealth is managed and owned by women, and again, that's going to grow. And the other interesting thing is across the span of our life, women give more than men. And one caveat as I go through these slides, it's not a value statement. This is based on research and differences. So I am not trying to slam our male counterparts in any of our conversations. But it's something that is exciting to see the changes. The other thing that I'd like to spend a little few minutes on is how women give differently. We spend more time in our discernment than our male counterparts do. We also value collaboration and communication. That's really critically important in our decision making. That deeper level of communication with the organization that's receiving our gift is a direct result of the gift impact. So that's something that, again, I've seen in my work, somewhat with the library, but more so in the children's health space. Some of the donor involvements that I've had have been women-directed. A perfect example is some advancements in neonatal testing that allows early understanding of genetic differences that may appear in the child. The bulk of the philanthropic gifts that we were seeking to support this work came from women. And so, and there's many other examples that I can speak to that effect. Some of our alternative therapies, music therapy, massage therapy, acupuncture, in treating pain, is yet another area that a lot of women have gotten behind and have shown interest in supporting this non-traditional work. All right, this next slide is dense. And it essentially just digs deeper in terms of how we as women are influencing philanthropy. One thing, and I'm just going to hit on a few of these, younger women are influencing household charity decisions versus their older counterparts. That's a change as we develop and grow. The other interesting thing that I think is significant that I see is women are interested in the motivation of empathy of others. Men in the research are more interested from the self-interest, things that they're personally interested in, as opposed to that empathic component. Collective giving, which is what you are all about, is a women's vehicle. There are a growing number of giving circles throughout the United States, Impact 100 being one of them. Another fun fact is Giving Tuesday, which is always Thursday between Thanksgiving. The majority of the donors are women. So again, another example of collective giving. Causes and outcomes. again, no surprise here, women are interested in supporting women and girls' causes. One thing when I was reviewing this that I thought was a surprise for me is how we derive satisfaction. And this slide talks about men, single men primarily, feel the greatest point of satisfaction when they become a donor, which is certainly a great feeling. Women are happy when they see their ability to increase their gift. So again, I think that's an interesting contrast to where and how we differ and how we look at philanthropy. And all of this leads to a phrase that I like to use is how we're rebalancing, women are rebalancing philanthropy. We have the means and the motivations to do this. Again, your organization is making this happen. The Ms. Foundation started in 1972. That was one of the first collective giving funds. And like I mentioned before, women's funds are growing across the United States. Gift size and impact certainly are significant, but one thing I want to focus on is sustainability. And this is a growing element of the giving focus. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this in a couple minutes. The other thing I think that we have the ability to make a difference is next generation involvement, involving kids, whether they're nieces, nephews, our own, whoever that might be, but showing and demonstrating and mentoring the value of philanthropy. And that can take so many different shapes, whether it's volunteering at the institution that you're supporting financially, whether it's meeting with, and this is what I do a lot, is we have multi-generational families come in and sit down with our physicians and our faculty and talk about the impact that the family gift is making and the changes and the findings that the work is involved. And that leads to what this is all about. Philanthropy is about relationships. I mean, that is to me such a key critical part of understanding the work behind charity and making these decisions. The other component part is balance and transparency. My philosophy is no surprises. We're in this together. Budget changes, staffing, labor shortages, external forces, the pandemic, are real, and they need to be part of the conversation that we have as philanthropists in determining scope size, changes, and the direction that the gift might take. Those things are very dynamic. Focus. I liked this phrase that came from the Rockefeller resource. The most effective philanthropy stems from issues that the philanthropist herself cares about deeply, issues with which the donor can identify and make a commitment. And then the other thing I'm going to dive into a few minutes is solutions through giving. Are there concrete strategies to solve them? And is there a clear focus on the challenge? And what is that? What's the end result? Are there milestones? How do we measure results? And one of the things that I think is a misnomer is most people think that tax benefits can be a driver. Not the case. Donors are motivated by a life experience, a deep yearning to make a difference for others, and a human need to be engaged with respected people doing important work. I thought, again, I liked the grouping of scope and focus on why we give and what motivates us to give. One of my largest donor projects that I work on involves a family that created a family foundation. And the motivation that came for their support was through their own family's experiences around mental health challenges. And they met with a team of our physicians and our therapists, and we came upon the concept of providing psychotherapy services for children with a cancer diagnosis or children living with sickle cell disease. And it was a 5-year gift, and with the scope of this, we built in metrics to identify what is that funding gap? What is insurance pay for? What's the cost of the project? What is covered by insurance? And then what is that funding gap? Because the whole concept at the beginning of this is building a sustainable program and doing that in partnership with the donor. So this slide talks about the motivation and the focus. And the solutions are this crafting of how we form the gift agreement between ourselves, the provider team, and the donor. What that looks like is we measure impact we have from the start with regular reports. We have internal assessments for this 5-year scope of the program. The next milestone is to extend all of this to our full hematology, oncology, and bone marrow transplant division and expand these needed services to that patient population. It's a very big goal. Because of our patient population, 74% of the kids that we care for, we're a safety net hospital, are below the poverty line. So insurance reimbursement is minimal, and philanthropy is what is allowing this program to grow and exist. So this dialogue and this conversation has been working over the last 5 years with things of staffing shortages, the pandemic, all the different things I mentioned earlier have come into play looking at these component parts, which I'm sure you as a group and your grants committee all deal with in your assessment. One of the ancillary silver lining of this relationship as we've worked together over the years is this donor's awareness of other areas of opportunity that might be a fit with their foundation goals. They have allowed us to grow our pet therapy program. We have 2 therapy dogs and handlers that we did not have. We have a compassionate care fund that was very minimal for helping families who lost a child pay for burial expenses, things that we don't think about. But again, our patient population, they need that help. And then most importantly is a wonderful session called Schwartz Center Rounds. They are a syndicated national program for caregivers that has a lunch involved on a bi-monthly basis. It's for everybody in the hospital to come together to celebrate or to grieve or to learn how to deal with the trauma that exists in a health setting. And this donor is funding that program. So it's very rewarding. I have the best job. I get to work with people that want to partner with us, that want to understand our challenges, but also want to have us be fiscally accountable and understand that it's not an endless well. So that's the role that I get to play between the donor and the provider team in bringing that together. All right. This is my last slide, and it's not anything that's a surprise to you. Gift size matters. I just had a conversation with a donor and I shared that with one of you, she and her husband made the decision to decrease the volume of organizations they support and be more reflective of where they felt they were getting an impact for the gift. And part of that was, as a donor, we talked about this, is building in the expectation of feedback and reports and understanding how your gift is being used. And again, I've had the benefit of a little conversation here to know that that's what you build in your transformational giving. Kudos, that's phenomenal. So growth and gift size matters. Grow your membership, and which is what you're doing, and building your base. The other thing that I think is critically important is reflecting our community and the diversity of our community. The whole DEI, all the different ways of celebrating and understanding diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging are really baked into our children's hospital in Oakland because, again, of our patient population. And there's a distinct effort to have our staff reflect the community that we serve and the hiring decisions, et cetera. And it's not easy. It's a very deliberate and time-intensive process that does reward. And so the discernment that you go through on age, ethnicity, backgrounds, professions are critical to be authentic in the communities that you're supporting. Just as a final kind of reflection, one kind of a surprise to the committee that was doing a needs assessment for building the Library and Learning Center was we went out and canvassed the community with the expectation that in Lafayette there's a big priority on schools and education. So everybody was thinking that the feedback was going to be, you know, enrichment programs for kids at all ages and such. What we learned in that needs assessment was that the adult community felt very strongly for having continuous education and access to programming and enrichment and in learning. It wasn't just about only the kids. So one of the things that I always reflect on that is to do your homework, communicate and reflect and get and stay involved in your assessment and in the work that you're doing. This adult acknowledgement of the adult learning desire, I think, was one of the major successes in why we were able to bring $16 million to build the Library and Learning Center and then build in a sustainability program for that. So again, that strategic thinking about not just now, not just in the short term, but long term. So sustainability is kind of a big deal to me because I'm always not wanting to go back to the well asking the same request for programs that people feel and understand are critical, but it's something that is going to be an ongoing challenge. So thank you. I hope some of this might be helpful in your work. If there's a couple questions, we might have a little time. Otherwise, it's been an honor, and I'm delighted to be a small part of your evening. Thank you. Oh, there's one question.
I do have a question. I understand that the Oakland School District is trying to entice more men of color to teach in their schools because the balance is so uneven. How do you deal with that in a hospital situation where I'm sure it's even more critical that people want to deal with people who look like them?
A very good question, no easy answer. I can tell you of a couple of initiatives that I know have been very successful. One of them is related to this therapy program that I mentioned, the family supporting. We have the opportunity as a teaching hospital to have a far reach for interns and people seeking certifications and training. So there's been a very deliberate effort to seek non-traditional applicants to apply. And the other part of this, there's a great book, and we're reading right now, our leadership team is reading, I think it's called Better Allies. And there's hiring practices that can be put into place, and these are the things that we're examining, where a job application often shows the credentials of the requirements of credentials, but doesn't invite people to apply unless they check all the boxes. And there's some common approaches, differences between men and women. Men will say, oh, I don't have all the boxes checked, but I'm going to apply. Women will say, traditionally, I don't have that on the box, so I can't apply. So there's some changes that we're making in how we put out job applications or job descriptions. The other thing is honoring time off, particularly with women, the gaps in the hiring. When you look at a resume and you say, well, what did you do during these 3 years? And expect something job-related instead of looking at the experiences that a person may or may have gotten in that. So there's practices like that we are undertaking to look at our hiring so that it opens the field. And then also using social media and seeking out what would be traditionally non-traditional avenues to seek people from different backgrounds and areas. So, and encouraging people to apply even if you feel that you don't have all the credentials. Of course, they need to be the right person for the job, but getting them there, yes.
So we're talking about the sustainability sense that many of these programs are never intended to be self-funding, especially if you're really, really trying to do lots of good. What does that mean in terms of, are you looking for different donors along the way or a long-term grant path? I'm confused on what that, how that looks.
It can take many different shapes. The platinum standard is an endowment, because then you have that nest egg that spins off a minimum operating amount to cover those costs. So that is like the strategic goal, and there can be many different ways in terms of how you work in that direction. So that would be the most bulletproof way of doing that. The other thing that we are doing is we do not hire any staffing unless we have 3 years of funding. And that's a new requirement as you bring on a program, as you bring on anything. So that's the other thing that you can look at on the short to midterm is what is that stability in a program, in an element that you're considering funding. So that's what I always look for and talk about so that it's something that has legs and then can continue on. Yeah. Great. Oh, there's more questions. I don't want to cut into your agendas. Okay. Nancy.
One of the biggest challenges for us is the only way we can grow is to grow our membership.
Right.
So are there any tips you have? What's that look? As you find a friend, you find somebody, a donor, a potential donor, do you have any little tips for us to figure out how do you like hook that person you want to talk to and then actually join?
You know, I think it's part of my gut feeling on this is letting more people know that you exist and the impact and what you are doing out in the community. And that can come from the people that you are supporting, the donors or the nonprofits, as well as your own individual networks. And then having, I think, a conscious communication plan to get out the word about what you're doing and inviting people to come and learn about who you are and what you are. Because you have the infrastructure, you have wonderful framework for running your organization and doing the work that you do. I think it's just building broader awareness would be my initial take. Thank you.
Thanks, Gwen. I have to say, it's so validating to hear all that, and I've learned a lot of new things too. So thank you again for such a great content-rich discussion here. So I am energized to see everybody here because for 40 hours a week down in Phoenix, Arizona, I spend it with a 21-month-old granddaughter. So I love playing at her level, talking, teaching her things, but I love being able to see all these wonderful women's faces and energy coming at me for tonight. So thank you, thank you. So I have the best job tonight of revealing how many, not only how many members we have, but how many grants we're going to provide for 2023. And when I think about my philanthropic journey, based on what Gwen was sharing, my grandfather was a big Kiwanis volunteer. He did things at a national, he went worldwide to conferences. He got a, I think, 80-year pin for the amount of dedication he had. And my father followed in his footsteps as well. But the women were spent, really helping and nurturing the family and things like that. So Girl Scouts and plenty of other fabulous nonprofit organizations. When I was old enough to start making my own decisions and I had my first daughter, I thought, I think I'm gonna go the women's path. So in addition to working with the Girl Scouts, I also did the National Charity League, which is a mother-daughter 6-year program that teaches people about philanthropy. And for those that know me, I just jump right in. I think I have all the basic foundational aspects, And maybe I don't check all the boxes, but I say I can figure it out. So I was a VP of philanthropy for them. I was also on the board for Loaves and Fishes, which was local community feeding the hungry. And those brought me great satisfaction. And I felt like now there was time to balance, after I retired in 2018, balance my, my volunteering and even walking with Susan G. Komen for the 60-mile walk, but also balancing it with financial contributions. So when I was invited by a friend of mine to participate in the grant celebration, I didn't know about Impact 100, and that's how I learned about it. So I was so inspired that I joined, and I jumped right into membership. Thank you, Nancy. So as we looked at, membership over the last 7 years, we really started seeing, as our grants were provided, the investments that we had made started making big returns. And I'll talk a little bit about it in a few slides, but the sustainability and the ongoing funds that have been received by these organizations is heartwarming because it continues to give back and impact more and more lives. So we really are making a difference, and I'm just so proud to be up here talking with you all and part of the organization with you. So we have, oh, darn it. How do I go back? Yeah! How do you go back? Oh, darn it. Sad face. Pay no attention to the man behind the screen. So when we first started out, we gave $55,000 grant, then we built it up, and we started giving bigger and bigger $100,000 impact grants for the first 4 years. The 5th year, we had enough members and the board work to be able to figure out how to do it, but we provided a second grant called a community grant. And that community grant was really impactful because a lot of the nonprofits that applied for the large impact $100,000 grant could see that they could seed their idea for the same project, but just started on a smaller scale, get some lessons learned, figure out how to do things a little bit different maybe and better for the future. And so that was great to see how this community grant was used. Last year, we gave 3 grants because our grants, our donations continued to increase. We have some fabulous members that have sponsored members and also contributed financial dollars, and so we were able to give what we called a one-time community grant that was not tied to total membership, but it was tied to total donations that we had received by our organization and our women. So I was going to say, without further ado, because I went to the store, I carried these things in, so pretend like you're surprised. And I think, oops, it might grow a little bit more. Oh yes, wouldn't it be great this year? 216 up to 621 in future years. So I'll have to keep these so we can inflate them later and save some operational dollars. But the biggest news is that we are going to continue to give 3 grants for this year. So thanks to, again, some additional members' donations, we will have one impact $100,000 grant. We'll have a $26,000 minimum. It might go up a little bit. Membership, it's a community grant. And then we'll have another $20,000 one-time community grant. So the amount of work that I think that the grants committee will do will be just as important as it was last year and forever in the future, to be able to really continue to select such great organizations for us to be able to vote on. So, yay.
How do you find the organizations who might be eligible for grants?
So that's probably a great question for Riffy to answer, because you've had some significant numbers that are aware and came to a recent event. You wanna?
That works. Should I address it now?
If you want, do you wanna hold that question and
Sure.
she'll, I know, I've seen the slides, so she knows it. But there's some new ways that we're doing, and so, you know, based on, I think about 50 or so women that are here tonight, we have a lot of new things that I think continued to be validated by Gwen's information tonight on where our focus is, what we want to be able to do. And my theme for this year is all about reviving our connections. I think COVID really had a big impact. You know, it kind of made us all in our shells, or we just were not as outgoing in big groups. So I was going to, or I am sharing that from a connection standpoint, we have it split between two areas. One is our community connection, and our second is our member connection. And on the community connection, we have a couple new things and a couple continued focused areas. So our learning communities is something new, because we said, we've had a lot of education of top issues. If you guys were long-term members, we had at least 2 mental health issues meetings, and what we have found is that in our community, we have a lot of top issues, but I, for one, don't know really what they are. I don't have a lot of facts behind it, and I don't know of a lot of resources or experts in those areas. So what we're going to do is launch, and this is a little plug, we'll talk about it more in our volunteer signups, but we really do want to have up to 10 members or more be able to help us with the learning communities, where you'll participate in a few activities and get, I guess, more information out, and potentially be able to find additional nonprofits that could apply for our grant. The next area is hosting and inviting people to taste of events, to the point of, we think we're the best kept secret, but we don't want to continue that. We want to get out into the community. We want to be able to outreach to organizations, focus on diversity. Thanks to Riffy, we've got an initiative started up around there, and also continue to let people know who we are. The biggest feedback that I've gotten is that it's hard for me, how do I exactly explain what we do? And so a taste of event is just that. It gives you like a little sampling of what we do, and the letters of intent that get submitted that remain unfunded because we are not able to donate enough in the grants to be able to cover off all the great ideas that are out there in the community. So if you can host or invite people, and we can figure out what the host venue is, that would be great. We have it's like only an hour or less that we run through a quick little read, review, evaluate, discussion, selection, so that people really get a good feel for who we are, what we do, and why we do it. And then the last area is around that community outreach. Thanks to Sylvia, Jane, and many others, they have put together some great content and organizations and outreach. And so we have people that will be reaching out, setting up, meetings to share more about who we are. And if you have any ideas or would like to introduce Impact 100 to your company, to another organization that you're a part of, book clubs, anything like that, that would be super helpful. just to raise your hand or send a note over to us. We will add that to the list. On the member connection, the newest thing that we have is the member directory. And hopefully everybody got to see their information and validate it. But for the first time, we're actually publishing that to our members so that you can use that to stay connected with each other. And we're going to include just enough information. We're not going to put street addresses or anything like that. But if you want to reach out to people to go to a social event or ride share to come to our next event, you know, anything like that, or hey, I heard you were interested in this. I also, so it's a lot of different ways that you can get connected. And we'll send that out to you all shortly as soon as we finish validating. And then lastly is to attend future events. So we'll walk through that in a second. But the other thing, I'm kind of like big into show and tell. The other thing I think that's been floating around are our global council, because we are a chapter of about 65 different other chapters worldwide now. And this book was put together based on a really nice grant, and it interviewed all the chapters that wanted to participate. It interviewed some of the nonprofits that the chapters have contributed to, and it has a lot of member quotes and information. And the East Bay chapter is included in this book too. So it's a great leave behind, and if anybody would like to put it in their office or another doctor's office or another organization, just let me know, because I purchased 5 or 6 of them, and we're happy to buy more because this also is a good awareness. Say again?
Informal activities.
Oh yes, informal activities. So the other thing that Gwen mentioned was just being able to connect socially. And so I'll talk about this a little bit more on the next slide, but we do want volunteers to be able to help organize about one social or volunteer activity quarter. So we wanted to start out a little bit smaller, and we feel like, you know, now that the weather's getting a little bit warmer, looking for volunteers to do that too. Okay, so here's kind of our events summary that we have here. And obviously February starts with our big event of the big reveal. So I don't know if it's been explained to you all like this, but we have 3 big events that really are great for you to invite people to and participate yourself. They are the big reveal, which is the meeting tonight. It's the finalists, meet the finalists, which is in September, because you'll learn more about those grant finalists that have been selected. You can talk directly with them, and it's always held over Zoom. So wherever you are, doesn't have to even be at your home, it can be in the world. You can participate in that meet the finalists, learn more, and then be able to vote for then our 3rd big event, which is the big gala grant celebration, where we actually award the 3 grants for this year.
And is that also September?
That is also tentatively targeted to the end of September or beginning of October. They're still finalizing that based on the venue. And great feedback from our first ever that we had in person in a long time, that they felt like having a lunch would be good to organize around that. So we'll be doing a lunch this year. The other 3 events are what we call community events, thanks to Melody. She led that our first year out and said, you know what, we need to do more things related to the community. So those top issues in the community is going to happen around the April timeframe. That's our target. We also want to do progress reports, and that's bringing in the nonprofits that have received grants from us to be able to share the great news. And last August, we had it at the, I think it was Walnut Creek Library, and the three folks that represented the organizations were phenomenal. And Riffy will share a few more notes on some of the feedback they gave us in that meeting. And then November, we wanted to do more of a volunteer activity. Is Stephanie Prescott here? All right, I saw that she had signed up for it. She was a founder for the Ladybug program, which is the Period Project, and we had a lot of women volunteer last November, I think it was November, to be able to put together menstrual packages to be able to be distributed out. And I heard great feedback from that. Yeah. Thank you, Elizabeth, for putting us on to Stephanie. And an easy name for me to remember. So, and we want to have that targeted around the November timeframe, October, November. So these dates and information will, continue to get more detailed and locked in. So we listed out, if you want to take a picture of the link where all of our events are now online via calendar, and you can go in and say, oh, what's happening this month or next month? And so you'll hopefully see the social or other activities come up, and you can put those in your calendar so you can participate. All right, I think, let me see, I think that is the end of mine. But before I go, I did want to acknowledge all of the members that we have. So can the new members stand up or raise their hand so that everybody can see and acknowledge you and welcome you? Thank you for coming. And I believe most of you were, and the rest of the members, we have a lot of founding members that are here today too. But I believe most of you came because you were invited to learn more. I shared that I was invited to attend. And so I would urge you all to continue to invite people. There is plenty of room for more and more members to come. And so these are great for members, guests. I think there's a few nonprofits here too. You want to raise your hand? Yeah? Thank you. So it's just a way for us to connect more, and it's open to anybody that wants to come. And men can come too. So, all righty, I will pass this off to Riffy now.
All right, I'm going to try to figure out how to do this first. There we are. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see all of you in person. I've been a member of Impact 100 for 4 years. I joined after I moved here to Oakland from St. Louis. And through joining, I've met this great group of women who want to make Contra Costa counties and Alameda counties better for the underserved population. Also, I've learned a ton about the work being done by dedicated nonprofits. 2 short notes before I begin. I'm going to read this, so it goes fast. And also, I have a cold and not COVID. So, here we go. Since our founding in 2017 and until 2023, annual giving and grants increased. You can see that there's an arrow that dips down slightly in 2023. And if all of us reach out to our friends and colleagues and invite them to learn about and join Impact, we can get that arrow going in the right direction, as Stephanie had also said. And looking at 2026, we have an extremely ambitious goal of reaching 300 members by then. Think of the impact we can have with those numbers. Also, as mentioned, we've awarded $660,000 in grants since our founding. The benefits to the nonprofits who win grants go beyond our support. We've traced nearly $2.2 million in funding to 3 of our nonprofit grant winners, helped in large part by the launch we provided. In addition, since 2017, we donated $32,000 to our nonprofit grant winners through special collections like Giving Tuesday and the wish list, which we published to our website. And finally, in addition, we have an approximately $70,000 set aside for other support as needed. And finally, several nonprofits who applied but didn't win grants so impressed our members that our members actually donated directly to them. Aspire Education, which is the Reading Buddies program, won our grant in 2021, and this is what they wrote to us and why we do what we do. The funds and publicity generated by the Impact 100 Award have been instrumental to our fundraising efforts. In particular, because of the Impact 100 Award, we were able to position ourselves to be considered for funding by the City of Oakland through their Fund for Children and Youth, a significant development for our organization and one that will hopefully be renewed for years to come. And we get those kind of notes from all of our grantees, by the way. Here is an overview of our grant process, and I'm going to try to speed it up. I'm going to mention some dates, but you don't have to remember them. They're on our website under the Events tab. To start the grant season in January, we sent notice of grants available to 200 plus nonprofits in Alameda and Contra Costa counties. So the first step requires nonprofits to submit a letter of intent, which we call an LOI. This is a short form completed by the nonprofit to educate us about their mission, what they do, their project, and how it meets an unmet need in their community. At the end of January, we offered 3 information sessions to provide background on Impact 100 and instruction on how the grant process works. This year, 67 nonprofits attended, which is the highest number yet, and why we need more members. So during February, the grant committee is organized and separated into teams to review the LOIs, which are due on March 3rd. So anybody who's a member, who is a volunteer with the grant committee should be hearing from us in the next week or so. We upload the LOIs to our shared drive. This is not a public website, by the way. And then on March 25th, we have our first meeting, which is a virtual, to review the LOIs and decide which nonprofits will be invited to submit more detailed grant requests. Historically, we've invited 10 to 15 nonprofits. As with the LOIs, we host another set of information sessions to explain the whole process. Then on April 14th, the full grant requests are due. As we did with the LOIs, we divide the reading responsibilities among teams. The team members could be the same as those who read the LOIs or be different. It just depends on who's available. This is when our finance committee undertakes a thorough review of all financial information to make sure the nonprofits have the capacity to undertake the project they've proposed and that there are no underlying issues that would affect their performance. We take stewardship of Impact 100 East Bay funding very seriously. And something I forgot to mention is also the Finance Committee does a preliminary review because we want to make sure that everyone that we consider is financially viable. So the Grants Committee meets again in early May to review the full grant applications and the nonprofit's financial status. We expect from this to choose 4 to 5 nonprofits for site visits. These are our semifinalists. We host one more set of information sessions to help the semifinalists prepare. At this stage, each team on the grant committee will have a leader who will be the liaison with the nonprofit to plan the site visit and help the nonprofits who make it to the finalist stage, which is very exciting. So between May 15th and June 15th, we visit the semifinalists in person. We hope to meet with the executive director, those in charge of the project, at least one board member, and if possible, someone who benefited from the services provided. After the site visits are finished, the grant committee meets again to winnow down the list of semifinalists to 3 or 4 finalists who will present at our Meet the Finalists event on September 12th. Part of the process is for the team leader to coordinate a dress rehearsal to assure the presentation is as informative and understandable as possible. This coaching happens between early July and early September. So Meet the Finalists, as Stephanie mentioned, is a virtual event. Here, the finalists present their executive summaries and videos that describe their project and their work in the community. There's time for an audience questions after each presentation. When Meet the Finalists ends, the voting begins. Every Impact 100 member may cast 3 weighted votes, 1 for each grant, for the nonprofit they think have the best programs and will be most able to successfully implement them. The winners are announced on September 23rd at our in-person gala. Last year, It could not have been better to hear from Meals on Wheels, who said, "It's a pretty great day when the one who comes in last gets $25,000. So the next speaker is our Impact member and amazing volunteer, Lonnie Marshall. She will talk about opportunities to get involved with Impact 100.
We've heard so much tonight about how what the process is and how well I think our guest speaker kind of talking about how important it is to continue the membership and all our wonderful grants. Because of the way that we run our organization, we are able to pass 100% of our donations on through to these nonprofits. But finding our projects, as was just described by Riffy, running the organizations and membership attracting, like was described by Stephanie and others, just takes, we count on volunteers. So I'm going to invite members to come up and talk about the volunteer opportunities. What you see around the room is kind of blank boards. Our hope is tonight that you feel kind of inspired to kind of join in the fun and sign up for one of the activities. But I want to mention something that was kind of shared early by Sylvia. By being a member of Impact 100, you're not required. This is something that we want to kind of call to your passion. You're a member already, and we just want to have, I'll say, extend the invitation to kind of join in some of the other fun that we can have. You all have talents and experiences that I know will benefit us as a large organization, and we just want to invite you to kind of share that with Impact 100. And I think I was also supposed to mention you can sign up for more than one thing. So I think Stephanie's going to start us off. We're just going to give a really brief explanation of the volunteer opportunity, and then we're just going to go to the next person, and then we're just going to do use our boards. Do you want to speak? I'm going to just speak from there? Yes. Okay, awesome. Perfect. I forgot we had these mics.
Okay, great. All right, so for the membership committee, any of these activities here is going to be like 10 hours or less of your time, and they can be pretty flexible based on availability. So when I look at the first one, it's outreaching, either to our members, helping to outreach to organizations in the community. So if you have skills of being able to befriend, reach out and start conversations and those types of things, I think this part of the committee is a fabulous place for you. The next one is around member volunteer and social events. We need about 2 volunteers for that, and it's basically to help organize the event, send out the invitations, and be able to invite and follow up with those members and or participate in the event yourself. So that's another one. And then our learning communities, I mentioned in a little bit more detail, so I won't go over that again. But this one really is a new place for us to spend some more time learning and understanding from our community experts and maybe a little bit of research that we would do ourselves on what those top community issues are. And then I wouldn't say it's actually like a volunteer on a committee, but if you want to sign up for a taste of event, if you want to invite people, send a email to me, membership@impact100eastbay.org, and we will get right out with some of my volunteers here to be able to help coordinate and schedule that taste of event.
I have a question about membership. Is it possible for maybe to have a consortium of people become a member as one? They would have still one vote, but they could pool their money to become a member.
I will, I know that we've had a conversation with the board about that and other chapters, because we're one of about 65 chapters, and there are some chapters that have defined maybe 2 people, where they like job share, so to speak, but member share for $500 each. But we do have scholarships available, we do have a member match, so at this point for our chapter, we've decided that it's one woman for the $1,000, but we have different ways to help financially if they need that in the short term. Yes, we are starting to develop a fellowship program, and is that the Young Philanthropist or the one with the nonprofit? Oh, yes. So we have a couple new things brewing. So that one is our Young Philanthropist scholarship that she was referring to, and that is over a 4-year period. We ramp up what the individual will donate and then what we donate. So we start out with more donation at the beginning and taper it off by the 4th year. They're donating the full $1,000. But we feel like that's a great way to do it because you can balance and volunteer for some of the donations that we are doing for the first 3 years. So, yeah. And then there is a fellowship idea that we're going to do for, was I going to do the events too? Where's the community events?
We're gonna,
Oh,
sorry,
where's the community events?
they're right over there, underneath marketing.
Oh, underneath marketing. Okay, great. Thanks. So the fellowship one is where we're thinking about possibly offering scholarships for those nonprofit organizations so that we can hear their perspective, and they would participate either in a mentorship program, learning, leadership, and or participating in the grants so that we can hear those voices during our grant reviews too. Okay, so community events, those 3 that I mentioned that are happening around April, August, and November, we definitely need overall leader for that, and then we need about 2 volunteers for each one of them, because this year we want to have them more in person, and that takes a little bit more of event planning, working with the community places like the libraries here to be able to secure that and get that done. So we're looking for a couple volunteers for each one of those events. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Just because the community events, we wanted to like spotlight 3 areas, and then that is more ad hoc. We could have 1 a month if we had as many members that wanted to host those. Yeah.
Just a reminder, we have a little, the handout that you got from you guys has a little bit more details, just for, so we don't have to remember everything.
Okay. Yeah, great. Thank you. And these I would estimate are, what do you think, Judith? Maybe 10 to 20 hours for each each event? So if you have 10 to 20 hours, you can volunteer to be one of these community event coordinators. Okay, I'm going to pass this over now to Riffy. And please sign up for membership, community events, and grants.
Exactly. So the grant committee needs a lot of people, and it is a lot of fun and a fair amount of work. The project review, we need 15 to 30 volunteers, and I believe we have about 20 so far, people that have done